Thank you all so much for being here tonight. My name is Garrett Hennigan. I'm WABA's organizing manager. Have spent quite a lot of time working in Montgomery County and recognize a lot of faces, so I'm really excited to see so many of you all here tonight. I'm joined by my colleague, Peter Gray, board member at WABA and Montgomery County advocate extraordinaire. I will let him introduce himself in just a moment, but I wanted to get us started. So we're here tonight to talk about a report and a proposal that WABA recently came out with that we call Equitable Investment in Montgomery County's Bicycle Network. As we'll discuss, Montgomery County has a great bike network and we have great plans for making it better. The biggest missing piece is a focus on equity in where we're investing those dollars. So that's what tonight is about. Hopefully you have some questions. Hopefully we'll answer many of them. And hopefully we will get you plugged in some ways to make this plan happen. All right, before we turn to the plan, I wanted to do some quick housekeeping. 2 years into this pandemic, this likely is not your first Zoom meeting. However, please do take a moment to mute yourself and keep yourself muted unless you're recognized to ask a question. Want to let you know that this session will be recorded and shared. So if you don't want to be recorded, please take this moment to find the video disable and microphone mute buttons. If you have questions, we encourage them. Please drop those into the chat box. We'll be spending some time at the end for Q&A. And finally, if at the end you do want to actually speak out your question in live, go ahead and find the raise hand function in the reactions menu down at the bottom of your screen. With the housekeeping out of the way, I wanted to point your attention to WABA's Code of Conduct. This Zoom meeting is a WABA space. And so before we get started, before we get to any interactive portions, wanted to note that WABA's first priority in all of our activities is to provide a fun, inclusive, safe environment for all participants. We believe that part of building that space is acknowledging our diverse experiences, treating one another with respect and kindness, and adjusting our behavior if, despite our best intentions, we harm someone. So participants, staff, volunteers, we're all expected to adhere to WABA's Code of Conduct, which includes 5 acknowledgements as well as 5 agreements, which you can read more about and digest at waba.org/code. As well as if you feel that somebody has violated this code of conduct, what you can do to report it. So thank you for that. So what are we doing tonight? 2 big topics on the agenda. First, we wanted to give you a peek into what motivated and what drove us to put out this report on equitable investment in Montgomery County's bicycling network. Hopefully answer some of the questions. No doubt some of you have very nitpicky questions, which hopefully we can hold to the end, because that's where the fun happens. But more importantly than what is in the report, because you can read that for yourself, is what we can do together as a community to put these ideas in front of the county leaders and the county funders to make sure that this idea of expanding our equitable bike network actually gets funded and built. So the second half of our evening will be all focused on actions that you can take to help WABA in our next steps over the next couple of weeks and months. And then finally, we'll spend some time on Q&A. Again, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll be trawling through there towards the end. And also feel free to raise your hand at the end and we'll make sure that we call on you if there's time. With all of that out of the way, let's move on to talking about this report. So I will happily turn it over to Peter Gray for an introduction and to get going.
Well, thank you, Garrett, and welcome everybody, those that I know and those that I'm meeting tonight. I'm really happy that you're all here. I am a Silver Spring resident. I have been on the WABA board for 10 years. I actually am term limited out, and as of the annual meeting in February, I will no longer be on the board, but I will continue to be an active presence in terms of what's going on in Montgomery County. So Garrett, if you can go to the next slide. We're talking about the bike master plan is sort of one of the major frameworks for this proposal. The bike master plan was completed a few years ago, and it underwent a very lengthy 2.5 years of review and public input. The planning staff assessed every single road in the county for traffic level stress, and then combined with that, assembled a list of recommendations for bike facilities where they were seen to be needed, and then put those in turn into tiers of priorities of projects. And so we're going to be talking about a bunch of things that are in tier 1 of the bike master plan. And this is like all plans. It is, came with no funding, but it is a really good blueprint for what we need to do to help make biking and resulting pedestrian improvements in the county. Next slide, please. So the other thing that happened with the bike master plan is the Montgomery County Department of Transportation put together a spreadsheet with cost estimates for every single recommendation in the bike master plan. And so I've been working off of that spreadsheet to sort of guesstimate how much these things will cost. Next slide. So the county spends money on bike and pedestrian safety projects, but mostly they are in the more affluent parts of the county. Some of that has to do with the fact that for a long time, the chair of the Transportation and Environment Committee was somebody from District 1 and in and around Bethesda, and he put a lot of very good projects into that, and also some of the squeakier wheels in the county in terms of pushing for these things are also in those areas of the county. Next slide. But that spending fails to address the needs of those who are more likely to rely on transit, biking, and walking. So what you see here in front of you is a map that the planning department put together with the things that are sort of outlined in color there, designated as equity focus areas. And they did all sorts of studies about that. And you can read probably hundreds of pages of what equity focus areas. But the sort of the bottom line is in these areas, people in the county are far more likely to not have a car, to have less resources themselves. And these areas in particular have less transportation assets that are contained within them, including safe places to bike and walk. And so what we tried to do with this proposal is marry these two concepts of one, the bike master plan and the tier 1 projects and the equity focus areas. And that overlap is where we're proposing that CIP funding go, where it's needed most. Next slide. So this proposal will actually, and we'll show you some maps of these areas in a little bit, will create networks of safe biking and walking in these equity focus areas, and it amounts to $110 million of CIP spending over a 6-year period. Right now, there are no good networks in these areas. Even in downtown Silver Spring, there's a couple of bike lanes that are protected on Spring and 2nd Avenue, and they created what we like to call back in the day, a few years ago, the Silver Spring Circle. But if you want to get everywhere in downtown Silver Spring, much less to areas in and around the downtown CBD, that stuff doesn't exist yet. And so that's what we're trying to build here. Next slide, please. So here's a map of the White Oak equity area. And you can see that these are all of the tier 1 projects in this area. And there aren't a lot, but they do cover some very major arteries, including Cherry Hill Road. And they also help people get around, where the intersection is of New Hampshire Avenue and Route 29, Columbia Pike. Next slide. Here's the Wheaton tier 1 set of projects in that equity focus area. And you can see that this is much more extensive. You can also see that some of these projects are quite expensive. Those are the ones that are usually on state highways like University Boulevard and Fears Mill Road. But even the ones on county roads like Reedy can amount to a lot of money if they're protected infrastructure themselves. But you can see that once somebody gets to Wheaton, they're able to basically pretty comprehensively be on protected infrastructure. Next slide. This is Langley Park. Most of these are what are termed in the Bike Master Plan as neighborhood greenways. They're not, you're not putting up concrete pads or bollards or anything like that, but you are making these pathways on these streets much safer. And you might not see it on the map, but if you look at number 2, that will hopefully ultimately connect to the Sligo Creek Trail. So this will be something that for a relatively small cost would make walking and biking in Langley Park much, much safer. Next slide. And then finally, downtown Silver Spring, you can see, again, the breadth of the network here and how it allows people to come in on 2nd Avenue and Silver Spring Avenue and just from places, east and west and north of the Silver Spring CBD, and also provides a way to get to just about every point in that CBD. One of these projects is notable on Fenton Street because it actually is funded in the CIP, but it hasn't been built yet, and so that's why we included it in this proposal. But you'll also notice that there are some facilities on state highways like on East-West and Colesville that are quite pricey, but will make it possible for people leaving the metro and the like to be able to get to places in a safe way. Next slide. So projects like this are funded through the Capital Improvements Program. And the CIP allocates $4.3 billion for transportation alone over the next 6 years. I think the total county budget is $16 billion over the next 6 years. And of that, there's $100 million plus that is classified as bicycle or pedestrian. Some of it is purely transit related, but it also is pretty much connected to walking and biking within the county. Next slide. So this proposal calls for an additional $18 million per year. So that'd be about a 2.5% increase in the overall transportation CIP set of funding. Next slide. So the timeline for the CIP, for those who are not deep in the weeds on this process, as some of us are, is the county executive always in the middle of January issues their CIP budget. Then what's happening over the next few weeks, including 3 hearings on February 8th and 9th, the full council will hold hearings about the CIP. And those are very high level discussions. And then the committee work sessions begin usually in March. And that's where, in this case, the Transportation and Environment Committee, or Energy Committee rather, will sort of take a deep dive into all the transportation related things, including hopefully our proposal. And then finally in April and May, real sort of the behind the scenes sausage making takes place, and things are balanced out, things are put in, things are taken out, whatever, and the council has to come to an agreement about this the week before Memorial Day is when that happens. So just so that you can look at this timeline, what's happening now is the full council is going to meet on this, and we'll have some more specifics about that in a little bit. And then we will be reaching out to council members during this time. And then the Transportation and Energy Committee will do an even further deep dive into this. And there'll be some space for advocacy around that. And then finally, at the end of May, this whole process will come to a conclusion, and a new CIP for the next 6 years. Fiscal year 2023 starts on July 1st of 2022, and so on and so forth through 2028. Next slide. So I think I will turn it back to Garrett, and he will go over some of the ins and outs of what we're doing here tonight.
Sure. Thank you, Peter, for that. So all of that was sort of a sense, giving you a sense of what the problem is that we're trying to solve with this proposal, what that proposal is, how much it might cost, and what the general funding mechanism is for building these projects, these dense, usable networks in some of the downtown parts of our equity focus areas in Montgomery County. Now we're switching over to what you can do. What you can do using your voice, what you can do using your feet, and how you can help WABA, if this is a proposal that you support, and we hope that you do, how you can help WABA sort of get this done, get it adopted into county policy and budgets. So have a couple of tactics that we're going to share with you and walk through and hopefully, convince you to join us and take action on them. So number one, we are, as Peter said, going to be spending a lot of time talking with and focusing on convincing individual council members that funding and building a more equitable bicycle network is important and should be a priority for funding in the council. The first way that we're going to be doing that is by asking for and sitting down for individual meetings with council members. The council has 9 members, and the budget, we use usually majority rule, or at least approaching that. So we have a lot of key decision makers that we want to get on board with this vision. Sort of throughout this budget process.
Let me interject for a second, Garrett, just so that you all know, the first step that I took after putting this proposal together was I sent the proposal to each council member's office individually and to their staff, and asked at that point, can we set up a meeting? This slide shows the progress that has been made so far in terms of setting up those meetings. Sorry, Garrett, keep going.
No worries at all. Okay, so you might be asking yourself, well, okay, sure, WABA, you're meeting with these council members. Why do you need us? And in fact, I would say that having individual residents, constituents of specific council members to show up with us, to lend us your feet and your endorsement, and to sit there with us fighting for this is incredibly influential. Council members want to know that the decisions they're making have the backing of their constituents. So you coming along with us can be incredibly helpful. So these are all going to be virtual meetings. We are going to certainly trying to have as many of these early on in the budget process as possible. And basically, we would love to get you at the table with us. The way we're doing that, you have 2 choices. You can either, we have a Google form, which is now in the chat. Thank you, Jeremiah. Or you can send Peter an email at peter@waba.org. We have been sharing this around, trying to get as many of these council member meetings and get this proposal in front of as many council members as possible. So Peter already sat down with Councilmember Friedson. We have 2 meetings scheduled with the staff of Councilmember Navarro, as well as Councilmember Reamer coming up. And we're still working out the scheduling and sort of following up with a few others. But basically, you as a resident, you live in one of the current 5 Montgomery County Council districts. Each district has a council member. And then you also have 4 at-large members. So there's a lot of people who want to hear from you. So if you're at all interested, please do either drop Peter a line or fill out that Google form. We would love to get you at one of these meetings. Peter, did I miss anything on that?
No. The only thing I want to add to this is we also did reach out and are trying to schedule a meeting with the county executive. And because the county executive race is so high profile, we're also reaching out to David Blair's campaign and to the campaigns eventually of everybody who's running, who's not an incumbent, to see if we can get their support. Candidates, some of whom are actually in the forum tonight, welcome. And we will want to sort of see how many of those people we can get to support this and make this a campaign issue, as it were.
Absolutely. And I'll just say, if this sounds like something you'd be available for, but you have no idea how to contribute, that's entirely fine. Once we figure out who's joining each meeting, we will get people together, figure out what we want to say, who is best equipped to say each thing, bring each message, and then work from there. So if this all sounds a little foreign to you, that's entirely fine. We want to walk you through the process and make it as easy as possible. Okay, so that's the first thing that we're doing. We're having council member meetings. That's a very one-on-one, virtually face-to-face opportunity. So on to the next thing. Number 2, and this is actually the thing coming up most immediately, except for 2 of those council meetings, is, as Peter mentioned, that the Montgomery County Council is hosting budget hearings. This is a time, sort of a rather formal time, for residents to show up and share their perspective on the capital improvement program or the capital budget. And I think it's incredibly easy to look at this kind of process and take the jaded perspective of, oh, they already know what they want to spend their money on. They already know what's going on. So why show up? Well, I will say just in recent memory, when residents come and speak up on the same issue, on the same subject, it really does get attention. Council members notice, their staff notice, and it very often leads to, a change in the budget, either a change in what was proposed by the executive or a completely new direction. And we saw that most recently with parks, as well as, at least back then, funding of the Capitol Crescent Trail Tunnel. So the main ask that we are encouraging people to bring to these budget hearings is just to ask the council to commit to spending, well, about 110 million over 6 years, a modest 2.5% increase to the transportation budget, to build a more equitable bike network, to bring the promise of mobility and safe access to jobs, and safe access to transit, safe access to amenities, to more people, and especially to put that money into the equity focus areas throughout Montgomery County. You have 2 main opportunities to weigh in on these council budget hearings. Number 1 is the actual budget hearings themselves. I say hearings because there are in fact 3 different times. However, it's a total of 4 hours, and all the speaking slots actually disappear very, very quickly. So the specific dates were announced just a couple of weeks ago, and there is already a waiting list for every single speakers list. You can still sign up, but I will be quite frank with you, it's very possible that you will not get a chance to speak. But that is okay, because we can have just as much impact with the written testimony that we send in. So if you can't get a spot to speak at either the February 8th or February 9th hearings, you can also submit written testimony to the council. And I've listed the email address there. If you do get a chance to speak, you have about 3 minutes to talk about whatever you would like, but hopefully framed around the issue and the ask that we've laid out for you. If you're writing testimony, it can be as long as you like, but most effective testimony is focused and short and makes a coherent argument. Great. So those are council budget hearings. As Peter said, this is the start of the budget process. Consider this the first opportunity that you have as a resident to get your formal thoughts in writing. Once those are submitted, the council and their staff and the committees will be working through those comments over the next couple of months. So this is the first of many opportunities to speak up. This just happens to be a rather formal one. So if you can, please do write some testimony and send it in. So that was tactic number 2, all around the council budget hearings. Peter, I'll ask, did I miss anything?
No, that's all good. I mean, I think the thing is you can also send emails to the county executive, and we didn't put that in the chat, but that's something you can easily search and find for yourselves. You know, as many of these folks who are decision makers that hear this from us, the more, so somebody just asked a question, are written comments limited to Montgomery County residents? I think it's, even if you work in the county, but you, and travel in the county, I think that the council will sort of take it with the weight that they want to give it. I think that you have as a legitimate a right to be interested in how people get around the county. And so I would encourage you to do that. And you'll have to obviously identify who you are and what your interest is. So that was Joan Johnson asked that. And Joseph Horgan put in the chat the county exec OCE@montgomerycountymaryland.gov email.
Great, thanks for that. And we have written up some good, helpful resources in the past about how to write compelling and effective testimony. We'll certainly be sharing those around after this meeting, because there are plenty of ways to make an effective and useful argument around these. So that's tactic number 2 on council budget hearings. Let's move on. The third thing that we will be putting out to try to get more attention to this report, to raise this idea that Montgomery County, it's not enough just to spend money on bicycling and building out bicycle networks, that we also need to make sure we're spending that money where it will do the most good, and especially taking advantage of these pre-drawn equity focus areas. So the third thing we'll be doing is later this week, hopefully no later than early next week, is sending out an action alert. If you're on WABA's email lists, you very well may have seen similar action alerts like this. You'll get an email from us saying, directing you to a website that will make it very easy for you to send an email to your council member. The purpose of this and the goal of this is basically to get as many council member eyes on our report as possible. Now, of course, we've already sent this report to to all the council members and to their staff. But the add that you bring is that you are a constituent, you live here, you're if you do live in Montgomery County, you're a taxpayer here, and your opinion often has more sway when we package all together a lot of them with representatives. So the basic ask here is we would like you to send an email to your council member and say, hey, have you seen this report? You should read it. And also you should find a way to fund it. That is the gist of it. When this shows up in your email inbox, please do take action. But please think about who you can share this with, maybe a neighbor, coworkers, family, friends, who might also, agree with this vision of a more equitable bicycle network for Montgomery County. So that'll be in your inbox either later this week or very early next week. And we hope you'll take action. There's also, I'll say, a sort of social media component to this to get the word out further. So whether you're emailing it to a friend or tweeting it out or sharing it out on Facebook or in your favorite neighborhood listserv, all of those are incredibly helpful to get the word out. Our goal is for council members to get email messages from many of their constituents saying this should be a priority this year. We talk about equity. Let's invest in it. Peter, did I miss anything?
No, I think we're good. I'm trying to respond to a couple of the questions in the chat, and we'll try and get to all of these questions. If not tonight, we'll try and follow up. But I urge you to sort of look for that. Everybody who registered for this meeting, which is all of you and some more, will get this action alert. So we're not going to leave you out. The other thing I want to say is that we will circulate to all of you, most, if not all, of the information that's in the slides that you're seeing tonight, and maybe a couple other things as well. But including yet another link to the proposal itself.
Great, thank you for that ad. The last major, whoa, sorry, have an overactive scroll wheel. There we go. Nope. Oh, geez. Stick without the mouse. Forgive me. Okay. The last major tactic that we're using here is basically we're trying to get as many organizations that work in or focus on Montgomery County to show that they're bought into this vision as well. We have lots of great connections with organizations that do work in Maryland or Montgomery County that often weigh in on budget issues, who have been awesome allies in the past on various budget asks, and we will be reaching out to them. However, we want your help on this too, because we know that you all live busy, civically minded lives, and you all have far more connections individually and collectively with other organizations in Montgomery County and in Maryland or the region that might want to take this up. So we want your help making those connections. So we're putting together a sign-on letter, basically, also to the county council and to the county executive saying, now is the time to put our money where our mouth is and invest in a more equitable transportation system by investing in better bike networks in the eastern parts of the county. So if you think that you have a connection, either a staff member or you're a member or you're a volunteer with any of these organizations, please do reach out to Peter and connect us. That would be incredibly helpful because again, when we show up with a letter with lots and lots of organizations on it, council members tend to notice and they want to find ways to say yes. So it's not just about having the right argument and the right proposal. It's also, which constituents, how many constituents, which organizations and how many organizations are showing up, sort of asking for the same thing. I think with that, Peter, did I miss anything?
No, we have started to reach out to some of those organizations that we have been in coalition with in the past. But I also think that any of you who, have these connections, whether you think we've done outreach to them or not, please send me an email and say, I'm a member of this organization. It also could be a neighborhood association. The county really wants to pay attention to the civic groups that are organized in various parts of the county. And the more of those that we can get on board with this proposal, the better. So I don't think there's any group that's really, too small. Maybe there is, hopefully it's more than 20. But the groups, whether they're sort of interest groups that you're connected to, or groups that of other people's are, or neighborhood association. And I am willing to make presentations such as the one that we're making tonight to any of these groups if they want it.
Thank you for that, Peter. Okay, so those are the big 4 tactics that we're using. Obviously, this is the budget process, as Peter laid out, is going to span not just the next couple of weeks, but the next couple of months. We may be, back in your inbox, back inviting you to a future action. But these, we feel like, are a strong foundation for giving this proposal, this idea, this demand, a strong foundation, and the attention that it deserves. So with that, I think we want to move on to some questions. Just to sum up, if you leave with anything, hopefully it's that really we want the council to commit $110 million over 6 years to provide more equitable access and safe transportation options. This isn't just for transportation, it's about achieving Montgomery County and our region's climate goals, and it's about creating safer streets, all enveloped within this focus on investing this money in the equity focus areas that the county has already identified as being the best places to put new investment. So with that, I think we're gonna do some questions. I will remind you all that you can read the full report at waba.org/MoCo bikeways. And here is Peter and I's email, which you should feel free to check out. But let's go to some questions. We have about 20 minutes.
Maybe you can stop sharing, Garrett, so that we can.
Yes, I can do that.
See everybody. So Christy has raised her hand, and then we can take other questions. And please try and focus on asking us things that we can help explain, as opposed to using this as a platform for other purposes.
Well, Peter, you already answered one of my questions, which was, are you interested in support from neighborhood associations? But the second part of the question is, do you have like a target date for the sign-on letter, just so that we can better understand how and when to engage?
I would say, and this is something we haven't decided on, but just off the top of my head, I think that going into the committee sessions, it would be good to get these organizations signed on by March 1st. I will be giving the organizations that have already reached out to, and these are groups like Action Committee for Transit and Coalition for Smarter Growth and other like-minded organizations. I won't be giving them a month to decide about this. I think I'll ask them to take a shorter time frame on that. But in terms of the neighborhood associations and smaller groups, I think if the March 1st deadline should work, and we can be flexible on that because maybe they don't have a meeting that we can get to before March or whatever it is.
Thanks, super helpful.
Mary Gant, you want to unmute yourself?
Yes, would you send us an email outlining the various things that we can do, the name of the report, and to whom we should send our comments? If you have email addresses, that would be really helpful.
Mary, that's going to be in the action alert that we send out hopefully by Friday. And so hopefully your inbox is not getting overwhelmed by messages from me. We also, I will just sort of give a brief commercial. We're having a forum, we're having a series of candidate forums, but we're going to have the county executive candidates having a virtual forum with them, and as many of us as want to be there on February 8th, which is a week from tonight. So that'll be an opportunity to see what those 4 candidates think about this. But we will be, the part of the purpose for the action alert is, for some of you who haven't done a lot of this in the past, this is like drinking from a fire hose. We realize that this is an incredible amount of information. We will be sending the slides around, but the action alert will give you very specific steps focused mostly on sending emails to your council members.
Great. Will the meetings with the various members and of candidates be Zoom meetings or in-person meetings?
They'll all be virtual. Nobody wants to be in other people's physical space at this point.
Thank you.
I will also say for those meetings with individual council members, we've done quite a lot of these, and as I said, it's incredibly helpful to have constituents there with WABA. Typically, we're looking for a small handful of residents. We're not looking to show up to overwhelm someone with 20 people, but 2 to 3 residents showing up with us can both lend itself to a helpful conversation, but also getting the point across that it's not just WABA staff showing up, but it's actually people who live here as well.
Let me try and respond to some of the things that are in the chat. Michael Jackness and maybe 1 or 2 others were asking, have we actually done outreach to the target users, so to speak? We have not, and what we're relying on is the process that the county went through which was years long in formulating the bike master plan, and also this idea of the equity focus areas. We're not reinventing the wheel. We are taking concepts that are very well tested, well researched. We know that those areas that are outlined on the equity focus area map are places where people have less income, much less likely to have a car, more likely to be people of color, and live in areas where there today is very little safe biking and walking. And so that's why we chose these things. How the council decides to do this, and if the council commits to a big chunk of this amount of money to biking and walking, we won't be sad that it isn't in exactly the places that we put. But we figured that since the bike master plan is a master plan that the county council has adopted, and that the tiers within it are things that they also adopted when they approved the plan, that these are concepts that the council is very familiar with and have been accepted sort of in a political sense by the county.
One other thing I wanted to jump in, because I think it's a very fair point of, here we are talking about an equitable bicycle network, and we're highlighting these equity focus areas. We did not have a slide for this, but it's absolutely the case that the roads and the areas of the county where pedestrian crashes are heaviest, where vehicle crashes are heaviest, and also for those who are riding bicycles in these very hostile roads, where bicycle crashes are disproportionately high for the rate of bicycling. I did want to focus in for a moment on how bicycle projects also increase safety. We're a bicycling organization. That's what we focus most on. However, every single time that the county reevaluates a road, spends their staff time and their planning resources on improving a road for bicycling, certainly something that is top of mind for us when we're in those conversations, and for county planners as well, is assessing all of the needs. So very, very common. I can't think of an example of a bicycle project that hasn't also improved those roadways or those intersections for other users, notably pedestrians, people with other mobility impairments or disabilities. And a large reason that these equity focus areas that we highlighted are still so dangerous from a traffic safety perspective is because nothing has been done there largely to improve roadway safety at all. So bringing new funds, bringing new planning resources, even if under the guise of a bicycle network, to these places will also necessarily come with improvements for pedestrians and others.
So there's a question in the chat about what kinds of bike facilities we are proposing. They vary. Like I said, in Langley Park, it's not huge alterations to the physical roadway, but it's just a few sort of cheaper measures that will make it safer for biking and walking. But then on places like University Boulevard or East-West Highway or whatever that are encompassed in this plan, these are things that somebody was making a comment about the University Boulevard bike lanes, that the safety measures were not as full-throated as we would like. And part of the reason for that particular project being the way that it was is that it was a pilot project, but the measures that are going to be taken, for instance, on Fenton Street, you're going to have concrete pads, physical separations between the cars and the bikes, the whole length of that project. And so a lot of if you look at the proposal, the things that are multi-million-dollar things, or high hundreds of thousands, those are more likely to be protected bike lanes as opposed to just neighborhood greenways. But the neighborhood greenways are in places where the amount of car traffic and speeds are not as great. The level of traffic stress is not as great. And so the county, in a pretty reasonable process, adopted those as the recommendations in the plan. And I hope that
I would sum that up by saying that exactly which facility type, whether it's a protected bike lane, a painted bike lane, or a neighborhood greenway, is entirely dependent on the context. And we are really happy with the proposals from the bicycle master plan. We were incredibly involved in that over the 2.5, 3 years that it was developed. The goal of that plan was to deliver a low stress experience across the county. And so we are very content with that still, but it's context sensitive.
Another question is about sort of why aren't we just calling for facilities that connect between these neighborhoods, say in the East County or whatever. Part of my initial idea in starting to formulate this plan was that we would get the tier 1 projects, and then we would also get the breezeways, which in the bike master plan are the longer distance facilities to connect people going further in and around the county. But when I put together all of those that would connect those 4 equity focus areas, it was another $170 million. And I thought that was just a bridge too far. Yeah, I know. I agree with you, Laura. So that, to me, this is just the first investment, the first installment. Really, in order to build out even a third of the bike master plan proposals, the council would have to be allocating $50 million every year just to those plans. We're not there yet, but I think that what we have here is something that is doable. And for those of you who are saying, well, I've never done this before or whatever, I am happy to meet with people individually to sort of talk you through how these meetings go, what you need to do to formulate written testimony. It seems intimidating at first. And when I first started doing this about 20 years ago in connection with the Coalition of the Capitol Crescent Trail, I was quite nervous in doing that. But I think that, we all have more resources than we really think at first blush. And I've seen people get involved in this who've been hesitant at first and then embrace the opportunity later on.
I see that Tina has a hand raised.
Thank you. I had maybe a weird idea. I don't know if it would help, but you're talking about equity areas, and just the brand new District 5 has either 5 or 6 people running for county council, and none of them are incumbents. And I wonder if you spoke to them, if they might promote it themselves, but also they're going to be meeting with tons of community members while they're out there campaigning. And I wonder if that might be a way of at least stimulating that one corner of the county.
So that's one of the things that we're doing in terms of outreach, Tina, where I sort of started at the top with David Blair, who's not on the council, but is running for county executive. And I'm going to broaden that to all these district races. Some of the people who are running for those offices are on this call tonight. That's how enthusiastic they are about these things. And we want them to voice their support in formal and informal ways and on the campaign trail, and to give them as much support for that as we can. So it's a very good point. And anybody on this call who has connections to those campaigns, should reach out to me and say, hey, I know this person, and I can help set up a connection with you, or I'm a constituent in the new District 6, and I would be happy to help you with outreach to these candidates.
And a quick addendum to that, since we are talking elections, WABA is a 501c3, which means that we do have specific restrictions about how and when we can participate in elections or work with candidates. We are required to keep a very good distance away from anything like endorsement. However, educating candidates, putting ideas out, and encouraging every candidate involved in an election to think about issues that we think are important is something that we can do. And that's why we are, as Peter mentioned, hosting quite a few candidate forums around the upcoming election. And you can find more about that at our website, waba.org, and click on events.
But we are going to be having I think it's on the 22nd of February, we'll be having a forum for the at-large candidates. And then in March, we will be having a forum for, and this should be kind of fun, with the many district candidates. And that'll be kind of a hard thing to manage everybody, but we'll let everybody get their voices in. But so we will be addressing transportation issues generally in all of these candidate forums. I think Marla has her hand up.
Hi, yes. I kind of wanted to continue that idea thought of equity on that line and really encourage you. I haven't read the report, so forgive me, but encourage you to add some of the background information on how equity has been informing the process, and really highlight that has been part of the process, and that the areas were selected from the historical work that the county did. I would also encourage you to spend as much time as you are thinking about reaching out to candidates, reaching out to community leaders and organizations in the neighborhoods, with just open invitations to be part of this process. I think so often we create a plan and then seek people to sign on instead of getting getting them to inform the plan and make it better for their communities. And so I really encourage you to think of ways to do that. I know it's not a lot of time right now, but there are probably some quick ways that you can do that, or even build into the plan continuing ways that community members can tweak how things are built and developed on an ongoing basis. I'm happy to talk offline with you about how, doing some of those things, but I'm really concerned about going to council and wanting to be kumbaya and everyone really loves a plan when you don't have everyone at the table yet.
Let's see, I know that Allison has.
I just wanted to say thank you and absolutely 100% heard. This is certainly an ongoing conversation and everything that you said is 100% spot on. So
Yeah,
thank you for that.
And
Yep.
Marla, you volunteered to participate in the council meetings, and I will reach out
Yep.
directly to you.
And I will circle back with you too on other ideas. So
Excellent.
great work, great work. I just wanted to flag that one area.
Allison.
As someone who's been working on transportation advocacy throughout the county over the last couple of years, I think Marla's point is well made, but I do also want to say that one of the most amazing moments, one of the things that really motivated me early on in my own advocacy was working on the Veers Mill master plan. And we, thanks in part to Natalie Santa Gonzalez's work to make this happen, the meetings for that master plan with planning took place in the community. It was incredibly moving. It was at the community center up north towards the northern, middle part of Veers Mill. And we had so many people get up through translation, get up in Spanish and beg the council to please build bike lanes. It blew me away. Many talked about their relatives. 2 different people talked about their relatives being killed. Several talked about how unsafe it was. And several also talked about envisioning a future where their children could safely ride to school or ride home from school. A lot of them said it would really be nice if their kids could ride around the neighborhood, that was part of something they had envisioned, that living in a suburban place like Veers Mill, like what they saw there. We've also heard that very strongly from communities near Langley Park when we did outreach to the Langley Park community and went and had meetings in that community. We had, again, PTA leaders and leaders from organizations like Cheer come to the meeting and stand in front of council members and say, please put bike infrastructure in. We had one woman talk about her dream that every time when her 12-year-old left to go bike, she wouldn't worry about him being hit by a car. And it was very, very powerful. And I think the more we can lift those voices up and help those people speak directly and use this as a way to say, look, this is a way that it could happen to make these streets safer, is good. But I think Marla's point is really excellent and one that's worth knowing, considering.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think it is striking. I mean, every step of the way, absolutely, we need to. It's incumbent on us to make sure that we're including every community that we're working with, or where we're asking for improvements. But there are so many plans that actually did have such incredible input that we really shouldn't be setting those plans in drawers. Once the plan is done, especially the good ones, where we know that the community was really involved, those should get fast tracked for funding. So yeah, you said it better than I did. Looking at time, we're just over 7 p.m. Peter, I think we can probably stick around for another 5 minutes, but should respect people's commitment to this. How does that sound? And I see, Allison, you probably no longer have your hand up.
I just want to say in terms of equity, I'm fully aware of my white man in spandex personal status. And part of the motivation for doing something on University Avenue was equity based. This plan is inspired by the changes we've seen in the general society in the last couple of years, at least from my perspective. And so anything that we are pushing in terms of spending, we want it to be going to places where it's needed the most. And that is an equity focus. That's an equity lens that I'm doing my best to keep my eyes on the prize there about. But it certainly is the case that we need to hear from other constituent groups that don't normally interact with WABA and aren't as much of a part of WABA as I have been and others here have been. And so we're going to reach out to CASA, we're going to reach out to Latin American Youth Center. But if you all have ideas of other constituent groups that might be interested in this, please let me know, because we're only going to be able to get as far as we can collectively lift this up. Any other questions that people have? The only other thing I want to add is that I hope that we don't get, and we'll see how this goes with the meetings with the council members, but WABA is not wedded to every last dot and cross T and dotted I in this proposal. Mostly what we want to see is two things happen. We want to see the county significantly commit to more funding of the bike master plan projects. And two, we want the projects to be going into areas where they're needed most from an equity perspective. Do we end up shifting some of this to other equity focus areas in and around Rockville and Gaithersburg and Germantown? Maybe that's what we end up doing. But the idea is to get the spending into the CIP, into the capital budget, so that it actually translates into safer biking for those people that need it most.
Well said. Just to wrap up, once again, you can find that report. It's not terribly long, but you can find that report and all the maps that we've referenced at waba.org/MoCo Bikeways. Here are Peter and I's emails. Please feel free to get in touch. As promised, we'll be sharing out these slides as well as all the upcoming actions that we mentioned by email in the next couple of days. So do expect that from us. And yeah, I think with that, just wanted to thank you all so much for coming and spending a little over an hour with us talking about this idea and how we're going to make it happen. So thanks so much. Have a great night.
Goodbye, everybody.